Is life worth the suffering? Why bother? Who cares? Sometimes we feel like the only thing to do is to give up, or that we just won't make it another day, or that if we look into the future and say, wow, I have to spend the whole rest of my life like this, you really begin questioning whether or not it's all worth it. I know I've been there. And I think a lot of the time, 90% of the battle is just not giving up on those days where you want nothing more. It is only in the prolonged suffering do things become unbearable. Sure, we can take some suffering here and there. Life is not meant to be happy all the time, right? But it is absolutely unacceptable to be suffering all the time. It is only when we are so deep in suffering does life become not worth living. Because if you were happy, if you were joyful, if you were living in peace, then you would wake up every day excited to be alive. It is only when life seems grim does this idea of life not being worth living come into our minds. So we have to ask ourselves, why do we feel this way? Why are we suffering so much? Why are we not experiencing peace and love and happiness? Because there are other people who experience these things all the time, so why not us? What is it about us that is so different? And it all comes down to the simple principle that is, energy is life, and without life, there is no will to live. You know that when you lack energy, it is very difficult to do anything. That is what depression is like. It's like all your energy and desire for life is zapped away from you. And so there are two universal forces that exist. There is darkness and there is light. There is chaos and there is order. There is entropy and there is energy. These two forces cannot be at the same place at the same time. So when we are cut off from the source of life, death is what fills that space. And this suffering is what it feels like to be consumed by death. This life, it radiates joy and peace and love. It is our most natural state of being, but there is something about us that is cutting us off from this life. And this happens on two different dimensions, in the physical world and within. So there are things that we do in our daily life that drain us of our energy, thoughts that we entertain that are negative self-talk, self-hatred, negative affirmations, negative beliefs and attitudes. All of these things keep our attention focused on negativity. And so you see, this mind is a tool to direct the flow of energy, to direct the flow of life. So if we are always directing this life toward things, situations, experiences, thoughts, actions that drain us of our energy, then death begins to consume us bit by bit by bit. And over years and years, we get to a point where we can no longer take it anymore. The suffering increases until we finally give up. Life is only worth living when you are alive, when you feel alive. But when you feel like death, you feel like giving up. You feel like ending it all. And so we have to ask ourselves, why are we not truly living? And the secret is that life is happening in the present moment. But our mind looks to the past and to the future. It judges, it wants, it avoids. So we get so caught up in this mind storm, and that is what separates us from the present moment. It separates us from life. As I said, life, our natural state of being, is joy, love, and peace. It is the baseline, it's the foundation. But our mind comes along and covers it all up with like mud and dirt. And so to reveal this life once again, we have to remove all of the garbage. I like to think about it, if our body was the earth and the sun was the source of life, which it really is in the world, all the mind stuff, our thoughts, our beliefs, and our attitudes, they become like satellites that begin to orbit around the earth. And the more satellites you have, the more it blocks the light from reaching the surface. And the less the light can reach Earth, the more death and darkness begins to consume everything. Because this light, this life, is the source of our existence. Without it, there is nothing. And so we have to begin removing the garbage, cleaning the house. Another example is that most people are like hoarders. The lights are on in the house, but they've got so many boxes everywhere stacked up of all of their ideas and opinions and beliefs and attitudes and judgments and behaviors that the light cannot penetrate through the boxes. And so you might get one sliver of light in your little home, and you kind of hold on to that. Otherwise, darkness has consumed everything. So you want to start cleaning the house, getting rid of all these ideas, emptying the mind. I remember one example during my dark night of the soul. I was sleeping and I woke up right on that verge before the mind kicked on. And I was sitting there and it was absolutely blissful. There was so much joy and it was just a nice, comfortable feeling. But the moment that my mind kicked on, immediately I felt this just whole flood of cortisol, just like the most dreadful, nasty feeling you could ever imagine. Just flooded my whole body. And I would live my day like that for many years. From the moment I woke up, from the moment I went to bed, was just this never-ending suffering. But you see, how can one go from joyful bliss to absolute suffering in a single moment? How can this be? It is because the moment that the mind kicked on, I immediately became separated from this natural state and became consumed in like this bubble of hell. Because my mind had been constructed in such a twisted and distorted way. In the simplest sense, I was separated from God. So you see, this joy is always underneath. It's always here. We should not go out into the world and try and find it. It's like we go out every day, go to work, go out into the world and try and find, happiness and peace and joy. But it was under our pillow the whole time. A story that the spiritual teacher Mooji has spoken a lot about is that once upon a time there was a man and his wife and their son. And they lived a good life, a happy life. But the man had a secret. For years and years and years, he had been hiding away a bunch of money. He had his own separate bank account to keep from his wife, who liked to spend. But one day he discovered that he had a fatal disease and that he wouldn't be living much longer. And so he buried his treasure underneath the house. And he only ever told one person, his best friend. He said, "Look, best friend, I'm going to be dying soon. When I die, please let my family know that the treasure is buried underneath the house." The friend, of course, agrees. And so after a year, everyone goes on with their life and the man dies. However, his best friend had taken a trip out to another country. So he did not know of his best friend's passing. And so one day when he travels back to the same town, he finds the woman and her son on the streets begging for money. And they see each other and he goes, "Hey, aren't you so-and-so?" "Yes, that's me. Don't you know? My husband died and now we're out on the streets. We have no money, we have no food." And the man says, "No, I've got great news. Come with me." And they return back to the house and nobody was looking. They find the hidden passageway and they start digging and they find the hidden treasure. And the moral of the story is that she always had this money, but was she rich? This is how most people live their lives. They have an unending, infinite source of riches within them, but they live as if they are poor because they are separated from this source, from this life. And so they don't see it, and so it is of no use to them. They are caught out in the world, living their stories, living their identity. And so they live in suffering, never realizing that joy, peace, and love was theirs the moment they were able to wake up and see that. And not many people ever do come to this realization. So you see, it is precisely the mind that creates this bubble that separates us from our source of life. And this bubble, this mind, is fueled by identity. And so the identity that we've created or accumulated over our life, it continually gets reinforced by our daily experiences. We react to things, we react to thoughts, we get triggered, and we fuel this identity with our emotions. We buy into and believe the stories that are unfolding. And many people are living stories that they do not want to live. So let me help you to remedy this problem. My magic potion. Holy water. Simple stuff. Point 1. Energy is the source of creation. It is the source of life. And our mind is a tool to direct the flow of this energy, this life. So the entire quality of our existence is determined by the quality of the things that we focus our attention on. And the things that we focus our attention on are fueled by our identity, both our conscious identity and our unconscious identity. The unconscious is the intelligence of our body, and the conscious is our ego or our mind. So for instance, if we build an identity out of somebody who likes going to the gym, we will dedicate our time, attention, our energy to exercising. And it won't be all that difficult. It will be almost automatic. You won't really have to force yourself to do it. After you go to the gym for a long time, it's more difficult not to, because you have a vested interest in exercise. It's meaningful to you, and so you desire it. And this identity is reinforced as you go to the gym and you have good emotions. You develop a positive relationship with going to the gym. You get dopamine, and there is just a constant reinforcement of positivity. Your unconscious speaks the language of emotions. So whenever you have strong emotions, you are reinforcing a certain identity. So you might perceive a pattern, whether in your mind or in your experience, and that pattern gets tied to a strong emotion, and this creates an identity. So the pattern might be the gym. You have a strong positive emotion, and so now you have an identity of, yes, I am somebody who goes to the gym. It can also be the opposite. You can go to the gym and have a strong negative emotion and continually reinforce a negative relationship, and then you identify as someone who hates going to the gym. So your mind will focus on the gym because it's interested, but there will be a negative tone. It will say, I don't want that. I want to avoid going to the gym. And so it all comes down to associating negativity with the things that you don't want and positivity with the things that you do want. Actually, I should say, you want to neutralize what is negative and only feed what is positive. So take, for instance, money. When you develop a negative relationship with money, when you're in scarcity, simply put, when money enters your life and you have a negative emotion attached to that pattern, your body believes you to live in a world in which scarcity is the norm. And so your body will only allow you to focus on the ways that money is not abundant. And so you will continually reinforce a reality where money is scarce. And that is how people live broke their whole life. They are unaware that their energy is being focused in the wrong direction toward a reality that is unfavorable to them. So, a piece of advice: don't give your energy to anything that you do not want to experience. In the instance of money, for instance, if there is a negative situation, for instance, it is of the vital importance to develop the attitude of, oh, it's no big deal. It'll get figured out. I trust in my abilities to figure it out. It's not a problem. It's no big deal. But what do a lot of people do? They feed the negative situation. They say, oh my God, how am I going to do this? This is impossible. This is not good. They get neurotic about things, and they fuel this super negative self-identity, this super negative relationship with money or with anything. They build a machine that is focused on finding money problems and not finding money solutions. And so you can see how one person, the neurotic, is in their mind about everything. They're thinking about the future, they're remembering the past, all of the suffering that comes along with money. It's not a good thing. And this mind continually feeds and reinforces this negative relationship and a negative self-identity. But when you say, or when you realize that, oh, wait a minute, all the riches are within me already. This life, this God essence, this consciousness is the source of all value. It is the source in which all value is derived. And so you say, oh, these petty problems mean nothing. Then you connect back to the present moment, where there is no story of the future, where there is no memory of the past. When you are focused in the present moment, the problem vanishes. It goes away because you are not focusing your attention on it. You do not experience it. It does not arise in your reality. And it is only until you think about it and get reeled back into the story do negative emotions about it begin to arise again. The mind cuts you off from the source of life once again, and we get pulled into suffering. And so here we can find the essence of the spiritual path, what it's all about. And that is when you connect to your true place as being, which is found through the present moment. You live from a state of awareness. You live in a reality that is non-dual, beyond positivity and negativity. And so you live in a state of neutrality. There is space between you and your mind and your experiences and the outer world. So you are not feeding any more identity. You no longer give your negative emotions to negative experiences. And in this state, what you find is that your life begins to harmonize by itself. You do not have to figure out all of these different and difficult problems because life is already doing everything for you. This divine intelligence that is life has already manifested and created the whole entirety of the cosmos, the whole universe, and all the different multiverses and heavens and hells, all the different dimensions, all without any help from us. It is only when we get cut off from this life do we feel like we have to struggle and strive and grind our way through life. If you didn't know, that is the story of the fall of man in Genesis. Because in the beginning, we were at one with God. We were at one with everything in unity. And only until we fall into duality, good and evil, darkness and light, does now the mind have the capacity to be separated from life. You go from unity into separation. And in this state of separation, life is a struggle and life is suffering. But there is no suffering in a state of non-duality, because you are at one with life. And the essence of life is joy and love and peace. And so more and more, this becomes your natural state of being. The more life you have, the more you have the desire to live. And the less life you have, the more you lose the will to live. Because death takes its place, you get consumed by darkness, and you have the desire to die. So the blueprint for you is to take control over your energy, value it above all else. Take authority over your mind and only direct it down the paths that are favorable to you. Only focus on the things that you want to experience. Only give your emotions to things that you would like to have repeated. And do not react to the negative situations that you encounter. But chances are we've already spent a whole life of conditioning and trauma and identity building. So a lot of the times we have to undo a lot of the things that have been done, a lot of the conditioning, a lot of the bad habits and patterns. And so we create a new identity by attaching patterns with new emotions. So for instance, very simple, if you have a negative relationship with money, you have a negative emotional pattern with it. So you have to change the negative emotion to a positive emotion. And the more positive emotions you have with that thing, the more your identity changes and your relationship with it changes. And you do that by remaining as an observer of the situations that you experience. Because when, for instance, money comes into your life and it's negative, naturally negative, but you don't react, you're telling your body, you're reconditioning your brain that there is no problem here. You do not worry about it. Therefore, it loses interest. Therefore, you take your energy away and you're no longer feeding the negative relationship. So you reprogram your body and your mind to not look at money problems, but see all the ways that you are abundant. Because somebody who is in abundance does not worry about things, because they know fundamentally that everything is taken care of. But people who are in scarcity, they only worry about everything. And so that is the only thing that their mind can focus on. So it's all about focusing our mind on things that are life-affirming, things that are positive, being able to remain neutral and observe experiences that are negative and not react to them, and to consciously create more and more positive thoughts, positive relationships with things, to allow more and more positive emotions to arise about these things. But as simply as I can put it, the more we focus on life, the more life will enter into our life. And life becomes more meaningful. We have the desire to live. We experience more peace and joy and love. And the more we focus our attention on death, on negativity, the more death and suffering and pain will enter our lives and we will want to die. So take control of your mind, because you have the power to create any reality that you desire, regardless of the external circumstances.